bureaucracy we're working with. It's not a real fault of theirs. It may not even be their fault. They're looking off tax return, tax information. So again, they're typing in something that may not be their fault. It might have been the IRS's fault. But it's on you and you alone to double check and make sure the work history is accurate. So let's talk about optimal time in terms of looking at your Social Security. So you need to consider things like I mentioned before, family genetics. I have a woman that came to me, she was crying. I said, what's wrong? She said, I've gone through all my savings. And I've done so because my advisor, my last advisor, did everything right. So I was scratching my head for a second, and I took that in, and I said, if you did everything right, why are you crying? Why do you have no money? And she told her advisor, she was 85 at the time, at age 60, she went to this advisor and said, look, my mother and father died at 50 and 60. All my brothers and sisters, my uncles, my aunts, all died before 70, right? I expect to live a very short life. So let's go ahead and budget everything out so I won't need the income until age, let's say 80, and that's when we stop. Well, she surprised herself due to a variety of reasons. She lived to 85. And again, her advisor did everything correctly. And she had no money because of that. So when you talk to me and we plan, we're looking at the late 90s in terms of longevity. We'll talk about whether you're leaving money to your heirs. We're going to talk about what assets need to go to them. We talk about all that. We get a big snapshots. We try to leave no stone unturned. So now let's talk about working collecting. This is probably one of the third or fourth most questions I get asked. So can you work and claim Social Security? The short answer, yes. But with a caveat. If you decide to work before your FRA, you will have to give back $1 for every $2 you make over a certain threshold. That threshold is, well, last year was $15,720. And I think, Ken, that's what we talked about on the call. It's actually this year it's more. I think it's $16,700 something. So I think we have the number in here somewhere. It's a more accurate number. But it's about anything over 16,000 something, 16,009, you will be taxed on that. I'm sorry, not taxed. It will be withheld, right? Now that doesn't mean that you won't ever see it again. You are given it back. But however, you will have to cut a check at the end of the year and give that money back. So let's say you make, say roughly $31,000. That's $15,000, just doing the math, 15,000 divided by 2, so you're looking at $7,500 that you now will have to cut a check back to the Social Security office because you worked too long, right? Too hard, made too much money. So just keep that in mind if you decide to work. That being said, at FRA, you're good to go. You can, obviously you'll be taxed on that, and that'll just appear on your tax returns as regular income. But you aren't penalized in any way, per se. Does that make sense?
I think you are.
In what way?
I think they still, even if you work to full retirement, they're still taking, I think, for every 3 or 4, you may take 1.
What happens is, the money that's taken is given back to you over time, right? So you see the money again, it's just prorated later on. But you aren't penalized, per se, as long as it's after age 66. So there are a lot of things you may have heard from friends, a lot of strategies that take a lot of time to explain. We'll touch on a couple briefly right now. You'll hear about things like deemed filing, hybrid strategy, maximization, file and spend, claim now, claim more later, what am I missing? Restricted application. These are all strategies that you can do to maximize your Social Security income. Now, last year was a monumental year in 2016. It was one of the many steps over the course of time the government has taken to seal the loopholes, right? One of those things was file and suspend. It was a strategy where someone could claim and not take their benefits, right? However, the spouse was able to file, the lesser earning spouse. They could live on those benefits and then watch the higher amount grow so they could get, again, 132% of their income while they were claiming on the other one, right? A really good strategy. It worked well and meant a lot more dollars in your pocket. That's gone. However, there are ways that you can still utilize based on your age. Some people, those that, for example, marry younger or older, you won't have this opportunity. This is very age restrictive. You have to be at least 62, and the primary has to be at least 66 to have some of these strategies work. So that being said, we can talk to them in great detail when you come in and see me. There's a lot of detail involved in those, but I'm more than happy to talk to them with you again free of charge. Let's talk about a couple of these now. So maximization strategy. If both are high earners, making more than 50% of the higher earning spouse PIA, you have the opportunity to just file and let it grow, and then collect at age 70, in which case you're golden. You're both going to be making 132% of PIA, maxing everything out, and I applaud you for that strategy. If you don't need the money immediately, it's actually very effective. Let's talk about hybrid strategy. So what we can do in this case is essentially similar to what I mentioned with file and suspend. Again, this is age restrictive. So again, you have to be 66 as the primary, 62 as the beta, and then you can file, let it grow, and then live off the, let's say someone's looking at $2,000, for example, as their primary, $300 as the beta. And again, you can file, collect the $300, which will slowly grow, and then go back with age 70, claim at the 70-year age where you get 132% of the benefits. So again, great strategies like this, and I'd love to go into more detail about strategies like this that we can do. That being said, we have another strategy, maximizing your benefits with coordination of your retirement plans. Now, your Social Security, in terms of retirement planning, it's just a very small piece of the pie. You have to look at your overall strategy. Where else is the income going to come from? When we sit down and go over the information form that's in your packets, we talk about everything from where you've been, what kind of wages you're getting currently, and any additional income you may be getting in your retirement years. We work backwards. And we try to find out how we can generate this revenue without you working. So you'll see in a portfolio, you'll see typical things like rental property income, sometimes you'll have pensions. Speaking of pensions, what percentage of the population had a pension back in the 1980s? Anyone know?
Majority.
It was about 60%. Guess what it is now? It's 10%. So you're seeing a shift, and this isn't new. We've seen this coming a while. This is why we've had a popularity and surge in retirement plans. There's been an overall shift in responsibility of retirement going from the corporate world and the government world, shifting to the responsibility of the individual. So now we live in a yo-yo economy. Not just does it go up and down, but you are on your own. That's why it's important to have someone to walk you through the process. So now we're getting to, again, the area where I'm most passionate. Now let's take a minute and talk about those other assets. So there are two different kinds at a very basic level. There are two ways to invest. You're in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s. You're doing something called growth investing. What you're doing is you're trying to build up your nest egg. You're trying to fatten up the chicken. We use a chicken as a comical metaphor. You're trying to fatten up the chicken as much as possible, right? You're trying to acquire assets, quite simply. You're getting higher income from your job. You're buying things where you're acquiring stocks and bonds, things like annuities. You're doing things like CDs. You're growing money in your bank account, your checking and savings, your CDs. You're doing a lot of things just to acquire net assets, right? So once you shift gears, once you're preparing for retirement in your 50s and 60s, and you're going to change your mindset, change your ways. You're going from a growth style of investing to something called income investing. So rather than fattening up the chicken, using our chicken metaphor, your chicken farmer metaphor, we're getting away from growth investing to income investing. And with income investing, we're getting away from growth assets, which we'll talk about in a second, to income investments, right? So it's the difference of keeping your fingers and toes crossed, hoping that Apple stock goes from 100 to 110, and you cash out, and that's how the money is made. Or if you don't cash out, it's a paper loss or a paper gain. Versus the income side of things, where you invest in something, and that's when your money makes money for you rather than you working hard for your money, right? That's when you put your money into play. You're employing the money. So what does that essentially mean? That means you're getting consistency in income. Rather than chasing stock, watching go up and down, losing sleepless nights, you want to go into assets that are going to generate income consistently, regardless of what the stock market does. So on a very basic level, does anyone know why it's so catastrophic to take money out of your portfolio in a retirement account. This one I'll take question. Anyone know?
Taxable.
That's one. Anything else?
Not gonna last, the money won't last for the rest of the life.
You're correct. So on a very basic level, we have no markers. We have markers. Okay, so let's take a stock, just yell out a stock. Any stock, any corporation. I need a little bit of creativity.
IBM.
IBM, okay. So let's say you have one share of IBM stock. It's at 10. We hit a bad market like 2008, right? What happened in 2008? It dropped. Let's say it went down, this one share went down 50%. What's 50% of 10? 5. Very good. Okay. So when that happens, what do you call your broker all angry? You're freaking out, you're frustrated. What does your broker say?
Just keep it, stay.
Exactly right. He says, buy and hold. He says, relax, you're going to be fine. This is how the stock market works. It goes up and down. Yes, that's true. But how does that help you when you had to cannibalize your portfolio? Let me give you an example. You know what 50% of 10 is. You passed that math exam. What's 50% of 5? It's $2.50. So when that $10 stock goes down to 5, and then it goes back up to $2.50, where are you now?
750.
You're only at $7.50. Are you back to where you were?
No.
No. You have to go 2 or 3 times out to make back just where you were before the drop. That's not even talking about a profit. That's getting back to where you were. So you have to be very careful with growth investing. It's great in your 20s and 30s and 40s because you have the time. When you're younger, you have time but not money. When you're older, you have money but not time. That's the irony of life. And when you think about that, that's why it's so important you shift gears. That's why you get away from the chicken and you focus on the eggs. You eat the eggs to survive because you'll always have that principle there. You don't have to worry about cannibalizing your portfolio. And again, when you see this drop, if the market is going up and down like this and this, and you're taking up here, that's bad enough, right? So in a very simplistic manner, this is a pizza, you're taking a slice, you take another slice until what happens? Nothing's left. A growth mentality is not the way to invest when you're in your retirement years for that very reason. But what makes it worse is when you're taking money out, there's a market drop, and you're taking the money out here, you're taking out not $10 a share, but really the equivalent of double or triple that because the share price is down. So you're eating even more in your portfolio, which means it's going faster, less shares. It's not, a good way to illustrate this is with a mortgage payment. I don't know, does anyone here own a home or rent a property? When you first got that home, you're all excited, you went out, you did the lawn, you bought the furniture, you did some remodeling maybe, you did a little bit of landscaping, and then you went out to the mailbox and you saw your first mortgage payment, right? And you realized, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to pay this thing off. This is huge. The amount of interest I'm paying versus principal, I'm barely touching the principal. But over time, over years, decades go by, and finally you're ecstatic because you finally pay off this huge amount of money at the end of the game. So what happens with your portfolio? It's the exact opposite, right? Because what's happening is you have this, if you had a $500,000 house and you're paying that off, that's great. With a $500,000 portfolio, it's shrinking and shrinking. When the market goes down, it shrinks faster. That's why it's important. You need to recalibrate. They say you should really redo your investments, recalibrate or reallocate. Review at least your stock portfolio every year. Really, I mean, at the minimum, 5-10 years for sure, right? I see people that literally, they have their IRA, 20, 30 years goes by, they don't even look at it in 20 or 30 years. They have no idea what assets are in there. They have no idea what kind of performance they're looking at. They have no idea what the fees were. They have no idea how much money they've lost because they could have moved elements around. So that's why, again, it's important to have someone who's educated and know what's going on to walk you through the process. So let's talk about the stock market over the last 17 years and find out why things have been so catastrophic. Okay, so we start in the year 2000, right? And as I mentioned before, in the 80s and 90s, you throw a stone, you made money. Quite simple, right? Actually, I'm going to get myself. So we saw a drop, and again, you can probably guess that drop is due to one thing. What is it? The tech crash in 2002. So to give you an idea, back in the day, when the internet was in its infancy, you could take a sheet of paper, write a great idea on a piece of paper like this, take it to an investment bank, a VC, what have you, and with a simple idea on one page, one-sided, double-spaced, oh, I love your idea. You want to start an online car market? Sure. Here's $2–3 million. Go have fun. Now, a lot of those ideas blossomed and took off. A lot of people made a lot of money in the tech boom. But a lot of more people made a lot less money and crashed and didn't do well. And that contributed to a big drop. What did the government and the Federal Reserve do to check that drop? Any ideas? Buy bonds is one thing. They printed money, but what's most important that we all probably pretty familiar with, and we still see repercussions to this day, is they lowered interest rates. What did that do in the real estate market? It took off. And as you can see, we saw a huge taking off, right? It just exploded, a huge rocket. And people just who never even thought about home ownership, all of a sudden went into something called subprime loans. People were giving loans for houses they couldn't afford, didn't deserve, and shouldn't have had, right? So what happened at the height? Probably this isn't too far away, we should know this one.
Crash.
It crashed, exactly. So in 2008, we saw that housing crash. So we had a 50% drop and a 60% drop, right? And now here we are crawling back up where we did not learn our lesson. I've talked to, my wife is actually a mortgage banker. I've heard that subprime loans are alive and well and people have not learned their lesson and we are yet again in another bubble. It's not just about...
Yeah, you're right. It's going to crash.
It's not just about the fact that the economy is supposed to be supposedly doing better, which I can give you a whole lecture on. That's a 2-hour lecture in itself. But now we're at a point where we're seeing huge gains, right? And does anyone want to take a wage or a wild guess where the break-even point was in 2000? If you put $1,000 in the year 2000, when did you make your money back? What year?
2013.
Very good. You get your gold star, sir. Very impressive. 2013 was the magic year where people started to see a break-even point in their portfolios if you invested in the height of 2000. Now, if you're a retiree and you retired in 2000, do you think you could have a sleepless night or two? Look at this volatility. Do you think you could be a little upset? Do you think you'd be a little distraught? There are variable instruments out there. Those were the go-to instrument in the 80s and 90s, where there was a big boom. And for the people that are in those variable instruments, they were suffering when they were in 2000, 2008 drops. A lot of unhappy people. Not only that, but let's talk about retirement accounts. Your retirement accounts, your IRAs, your 401ks, your Roths, they drop 40, 50%, 60%. And hopefully, you guys are lucky ones because you aren't retired at that point. But if you retired in 2008, you were having to get a job at Walmart. You had to go back to work at McDonald's. There was no other solution. You could not survive. And if you did try to survive, you had this happen to you, right here. Right there. So that's the dilemma you guys are facing right now. The big unknown, right? So let's talk about the big unknown. So we know there's a bull market where things go up, a flat market where you make no money, and then there's a bear market where you're clawing your way down. Let me see a show of hands. Who thinks the market's going to go up? Two optimistic people. Did you guys play sports as a kid?
Yeah.
Did you, sir? Usually people that play sports are pretty optimistic by nature. I'm guessing you have some pretty good assets, because usually you don't acquire those assets with a can-do attitude. So I appreciate your positive outlook. For the rest of you, I tend to agree with you. I think we are at a high point, and what do we know? Think about the basic element, what every man, woman, and child knows when they first hear about the stock market. What are you taught? You buy low and you sell. Where are we now? So in terms of recalibrating, in terms of finding an opportunity to reallocate, diversify, change the mindset from growth to income investments, do you think we could be looking at a great opportunity here where you may be able to cut the cards from the Vegas table? You've won. Congratulations. Do you think maybe it's time to go and go a different route? Invest for income. Get away from the growth of the talent. And make sure that you're protected in your retirement years. That you have the safety net. That you don't have to have the sleepless nights. You don't have the headaches. You don't have to scream at your broker for the fact that he was just doing what he was doing. He's just a salesman. A broker is just a sales professional. You need someone who's a fiduciary, who's on your side, that's going to help you. So that being said, if you look at the total average stock market return, what does Wall Street say over the last, let's say, 100 years? What does you make on average? What are you making on average in the stock market? What percentage do you make?
4.7.
4.7, do I hear anything else? Do I hear 5? Do I hear 5? 6, do I hear 6?
7.
They say on average 10%. 7 to 8% for share price, 1 to 2% for interest in dividends. Having looked at the amazing amount of portfolios I have, the millions of portfolios, I can tell you without a doubt, if you're growth invested, you're probably looking at about 1.5, maybe if you're lucky 2% in terms of interest in dividends. Guess what was made here from 2000 to 2017? Guess what kind of growth, not share price, but interest in dividends. Guess what you made?
1.5%, 2%.
A little over 2%. Very good, sir. Your second gold star for that. Again, interest in dividends, where you can live on, not chasing the share price, keeping your fingers and toes crossed, hoping to God it's going to go up. Right now, we are in an artificially stimulated economy. We've been in that for some time. We've talked already about the fact that it's been artificially stimulated through printing of money, interest rates, low interest rates, buying bonds. Not only that, the reason we see such a jump, they call it the Trump bump, by the way. Do you want to know what it's based on? Do you know why after that election it went up? Very good. Hope, anticipation, expectation. It's the fact that they're hoping because we're going to have a corporate-friendly government that it's going to do well in corporate America. The thing is, it worked. It did work. We saw that bump, right? But why is that? It's because once upon a time, corporations that were once making 65% profit are now able to make 85% profit, right? And that optimism, that hope, the expectation, that's baked into the share price, the PE ratio, right? Well, let's talk about that for a second. Now that it's been baked in, we've seen it played out, how much farther do you really think it can go?
I mean, maybe 3 years a month.
Right. So again, it goes back to the whole casino analogy I used earlier. So if you're sitting at the card table, remember the song, The Gambler? You got to know when to hold them. There you go. So you guys have won, right? You've hit a great market, Now what happens when that turns? You can risk maybe going up 5, maybe 10% more, but knowing it could go 50, went 60, could it go 70%? There are economists out there like Harry Dent that thinks it's going to go down to 70%. I don't think it's going to be that drastic. I think it's going to be more like 30, 40.
30%, that's what it means.
Yeah, 30 to 40. We're going to see a correction no matter what. It's just a matter of when, right? But how much more? Knowing we have a house of cards right now, how much longer do we think, how much steam do we really have left? So getting back to our analogy with our discussion about the stock market performance. Wall Street says 7 to 8% for share price, 1 to 2% interest in dividends. So that's not always, that's not the whole story, right? That's not always the case. So let's explain why. My wife and I, we like to go jogging. Within 2 of us, we average 10 miles or so a week, right? Now with that in mind, if I then told you that my wife runs 20 miles and I run 0, doesn't that paint a completely different picture? Let me explain. So with Wall Street, they're going to tell you a bear market is this section here when it goes down. They're going to tell you a bear market is when it goes up. The truth couldn't be farther from the case, and I'm going to explain why. If we look back at our stock market history, we have bear on the left and bull markets on the right. From 1899 to 1922, we were in World War I, a disaster. We were in bear market, 23 years of 0 growth. That shifted from 1922 to 1929, the roaring 20s. It wasn't all about flapper dresses and fun cars and bootlegging. It was the first time where the average Joe made serious money. A 400% rise in the stock market back then, a 7-year period. Then we look at the pendulum swinging to the opposite direction. 1929 to 1954. It took not World War II, but them returning home to see the growth in corporate America. Anyone want to know why? While the defense industry and the money going towards it helped, what really saw growth in corporate America is when people took flight to the suburbs. Because what's in the suburbs in 1954? Nothing. So what do you have to do when there's nothing around? You have to buy things. You buy houses, you buy cars, you buy then an icebox, now a refrigerator. And that's why corporate America took off. That was a golden age in the stock market at the time. And we saw, again, a 12-year period of unstaggered growth. And then once again, we shift backward, 1966 and 1982, a 16-year period where we saw a lot of political turmoil, economic turmoil. We had, the Cuban Missile Crisis, we had Watergate, we had Nixon, we had a whole onslaught of issues. The oil embargo, a lot of things, Civil Rights March, a lot of reasons people were out picketing, rioting, protesting when they could be buying products, right? And if you invested $1,000 in 1966, guess when you saw that $1,000 back? 1982. And then what happened? The pendulum once again swung to the other direction. Again, the stock market going up and down constantly. And we saw from 1982 to 2000, 18 years of unstaggered growth, biggest jet in history, why do you think we saw that? Any ideas? Part of it. Technology. Technology made the price of services and goods, products, all come down. We had the birth of the computer, that started an entire industry. We had Reaganomics, Clintonomics, both worked well. We had a strong economy in that time. And here we are in the current time, 2000 to God knows when. But let's talk about that. What's the average duration for a bear market on the left side? Yeah, you're about, say about 20, 21, somewhere in there. What about a bull market on the right? Yeah, about 12, 15, somewhere in there. And what's the full market cycle together, the full secular market, beginning to end of one bear and one bull? Just add those up. Yeah, it's around 30 or so, maybe. So knowing we're 17 years in to a potentially 30-year market cycle, do you think, going back, that we could be looking at a third drop, maybe a fourth drop, maybe a sixth drop? I'll tell you, if you look at our history, every one of the bear markets has anywhere from 3 to 6 drops. 3 to 6 drops. How many have we had? We've had 2 so far, 2000 and 2000. Now let's talk about the third sign, which is the P/E ratios, right? So what are P/E ratios? Quite simply, it's price to earnings. It's a way people measure the value of a company. One of the many ways you measure the value of a company. So when we look over in the bear markets, guess what P/E ratios generally are in the gloomiest of times?
The bear markets, what's the PEs or lower?
Give me a number.
16.
A little bit lower. Usually single digits, maybe 10. What are you looking at in terms of a bull market? What do you think P/E ratios would be?
Oh, so around 20.
Around 30. You're close. So guess where we are right now?
We're over our head.
You guys have to be more adventurous and just go for it. Give me a number. I'm not going to think
I'm
less.
going to ask you what PE
Give me a number. Yeah, give me a random ratio. As a collective market, what do you think the P/E ratios are on average?
25.
Very close. Very close. 26. So knowing that at the top of these peaks, guess what they were? 30 to 35. So while I think we may have some time, we're in that direction. We're in the direction. So take advantage of the opportunity. There is a window of opportunity. Go through it. And that's exactly what you're doing, gambling.
Yeah.
So now let's shift gears. And before we go into taxation, this is really we're getting into the home stretch here. If everyone could just take out their feedback form and just want to take a brief minute to fill this out. And once you've done, I want everyone to pass them all up into this corner and we'll leave them right there. And while you're doing that, I just want to mention, what does it mean when you come in to talk to me? So again, it's absolutely complimentary. We don't have to be limited to talking just about Social Security. We can talk about retirement planning, estate planning, taxation. We do all these things. We're something of a one-stop shop. I'll wait for them to finish this one. It's your hour. We talk about what you want to talk about. I'll tell you what we will talk about, what we won't. I'll tell you what we won't talk about, and that's I will not try to make you a client. I will not try to make you a client. You will have to ask me. It's your hour. We do what you want. We talk about what you want. Again, this is all about the deal we have with the library. I'm not allowed to sell my services, so I'm just basically living up to my end. Again, the next 2 weeks, this is about your group. After that, I go back to focusing more on my clients' portfolios. So again, I encourage you to take advantage of the opportunity. It is an amazing opportunity.
The next one's just an alternate date, though, the same thing.
Yeah, the next seminar we have for Social Security here will be on the 3rd of October. Same exact information. So if you're welcome to come back. It's kind of like watching a movie for the second time. You get a little bit more out of it each time you watch it. Not as much fun, but you'll still learn a lot. So because we're crunched for time, we're going to just go move forward. You guys can finish those feedback forms, and again, feel free to just drop them off right there, or you can pass them in front, whatever, or you can just wait till the end of the class. So that being said, let's talk about taxation and minimizing those taxes for your benefit purposes. So in terms of taxation of Social Security, there are different types of taxes. There's adjusted gross, there's modified gross, there's taxable income, there's provisional. Provisional is all we're talking about for the sake of Social Security for these purposes, right? Sir, feel free to take a water in a folder and sign in if you don't mind. So in terms of taxation for Social Security, let's talk about that. So if you're married, there are thresholds. If you're making a certain amount with Social Security, you are taxed on it. What is that formula? Well, it's AGI, or adjusted gross income, plus 1/2 your Social Security benefit, plus the tax-exempt interest, things like muni bonds. So wait, hold on. Let's stop. So you're telling me to find out how much to be taxed on Social Security, you have to give half your Social Security benefit? Does that even make sense? Not really, but that's how it works. That being said, the thresholds are such where if you're making under $32,000 and marrying filing jointly, you don't have to worry about taxation on that amount. Again, we're not talking about the full amount of taxation. This only applies to Social Security, right? I'm not worrying about if you're working out as you collect. We're not talking about that, right? That's an issue for your CPA, whoever's doing your taxes. So let's talk about if you are working. So if you're making if you're making 3,200 to 32,000 to 44,000, you're taxing to 50 percentile. Right? That's the threshold. That's not what that's what you put on your tax return, right? You're not taxed 50%. That's what's taxable income. Do you guys understand the difference there? So if you're making over 44,000, that's taxable at 45%. Right? So conversely, if you're single or you head of household or qualifying widower, then under 25 you're at 0, 25 to 34,000, you're up to 50,000, 50% threshold, and then at 34 you're at 85%, right? So again, this is just what you're putting on your IRS, you're going to have to pay taxes on. That's not the taxable. Okay, so what are the ways to minimize taxes, right? Well, we can stop working as hard or as much, or get paid less, right? You have the opportunity to anticipate something called RMDs, which I mentioned before, the required minimum distributions, which is the income that's required to be taken out at age 70